Welcome to Visionaries Global Media, your number one source for podcasting entertainment. Visionaries Global Media, envisioning excellence on a global scale.
Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of It's Our House Pod with Faz and Dees. How are you, Dees?
I am great, mate. How are you?
I'm very, very good. Thank you very much. Very, very good.
Good.
Loving where we are, loving the new layouts, loving the network, loving everything. It's
Yeah, man.
a good time. We're really
Going places.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. We put a lot of effort into these, you know what I mean? So to get that type of recognition, I'm all about it.
Yeah, man.
So before we proceed with today's show, it's going to be a little bit of a special one. We thought we'd give a big shout out to our sponsors, wrestlingpins.bigcartel.com. That's wrestlingpins.bigcartel.com. That's WRASSLIN pins. And they've got pins like Ultimate Warrior, The Undertaker, Stone Cold, Bret Hart, Razor Ramon, and they're going to have more and more because they're just top blokes. We love them very much. So head on over, enter the promo code IOHPOD15 for 15% off your order. That's IOHPOD15 for 15% off your order. Also,
at the minute they're teasing their next pin as well.
Yes. So always head over to their social media. They love to plant the teasers. They put little segments of the pins up, and you have to guess who it is. So it's a good little game if you want to go over and get involved. And we'll also want to give a big shout out to Pro Wrestling Tees. Just head on over there and enter It's Our House in the description for the store, and you'll see our merch. If you head on down to our link tree, there's links that take you directly there. Every purchase you make really helps out a content creator like us, and we will say this: every single penny it makes goes right back into the business. It helps us with guests. Absolutely. It helps us with equipment. It helps us with everything. So for everyone who's buying a shirt or thinking about buying a shirt, it really means a lot. And it's got that handsome bugger right on the picture. But today, what we thought
would have made sense for me to wear my shirt, probably, wouldn't it?
They probably would, yeah. But we saved them. You see, you can't have it all the time. I can't have It's Our House Pod t-shirt with it. It's Our House Pod background because I just end up.
You'd look crazy.
You know what I mean?
You'd look mental. You'd just be floating ahead.
I just need to change it. But today, what we thought we'd do, because someone is having a very, very good 2021, and that's the Rated R Superstar Edge. So what we thought we'd do today is talk about his biggest moments in his career within professional wrestling, especially within WWE. We've picked out top 5, so we're going to go through them one at a time, and we're going to give some mentions at the end. So, I mean, what do you think about Edge? What are your thoughts on? Because obviously the wrestling community absolutely love him.
Well, obviously, his 2020 started off incredible as well. Not just 2021. If we go all the way back, nobody really expected to see him back. I know we had that little teaser at SummerSlam 2019, wasn't it, when he came in and speared Elias, and that was a big pop. I remember watching that episode of 24 they did on Edge, where he spoke about how that, when he did that and he felt good and he got back up and it didn't hurt his neck, he was like, shit, I might be ready to do this.
What I loved about that segment as well, by the way, is when he went out, he actually didn't know what he was going to do until he stepped in the ring, and then he said to Elias, I'm going to spear you. That takes guts after his injury.
Yeah. And his wife wasn't happy about it, was she? No. She had no idea. It's like, you fucking, what are you doing? I'm a big fan of Edge. Anybody that's watched this show knows how much I will talk about TLC2 and how much tag team wrestling means to me. Jeff Hardy and Edge were always the two that really sort of, that I gravitated the most towards out of that 6 of that era, with the Dudleys as well. I was thrilled to see him back. I was surprised about him winning the 2021 Royal Rumble. I've had some discussions with people on Twitter, shall we say. I don't think it was necessarily needed, but I think it was also possibly a knee-jerk reaction to Keith Lee testing positive for COVID, so they had to do something.
Well, we don't know
story.
if he tested positive, do we? We just know Mia Yim did. I don't think they put out that he has. It's just that he lives with her, so he has to quarantine as well.
Yeah. So he's probably just isolating to be on the safe side. Yeah. But yeah, it was still a massive moment. You can't not be happy for the guy. Having to retire at the top of his game in the prime of his career, with the title in hand.
We've seen a brilliant WrestleMania as well.
Yeah, absolutely. How many retirement speeches have we seen now, and how many farewell speeches have we seen? And they're always sad.
Yeah.
But Edge's was properly heartbreaking because fighting back the tears and the emotion. So this whole redemption story has been absolutely beautiful to watch. Really intrigued where he's going to go with it, because obviously the three potential options of Finn, Roman, Drew. Any of those matches is going to be stellar.
Yeah.
You would imagine. Looking at how Edge looks $1,000,000, he looks the best he's ever looked, even back in his youth. I think he looks better now, all grizzled and toned and ripped. And he can still go as well. He can really still go. He lasted, what was it in the Rumble, over an hour?
Yeah,
it must have been, because he was number one, wasn't he? So
well, it's not really 2 minutes, is it? It's not 2 minutes.
No.
It's like 30 seconds, 37, 42.
35, 12 and a bit, whatever. As soon as someone wants to go out, just let them go, whatever. How long's it been? Oh, it's been quarter of an hour. Oh, shit, let's send out 7 of them. They just don't care. The women's Rumble was even worse for it. They were literally like 30-second intervals. Awful.
They really were.
But yeah, that's how I feel about it. Couldn't be happier for the guy. I watched NXT last night.
That'll be the 3rd of February, just in case anyone.
3rd of Feb, depending on when you're watching this. And he came out for a really cool little. We knew he was coming out, and we'd heard rumors that it was going to be something to do with Finn, because he's big on Finn, wanted to give him that rub. But even so, when Finn and Pete Dunne were in the ring together, having their back and forth, and Edge came out to save us from having to listen to Pete Dunne on the microphone. It was just a really cool moment to see. It was just surreal. I love Finn, I love Pete Dunne.
Shortly after.
Yeah, that was a really cool bit backstage. I think that sort of alluded more to what's going to happen with Karrion Kross, because it's a bit up in the air at the minute.
Well, I've got a feeling it may be a case of he doesn't win the NXT title again, and it might be after Edge cashes in, they bring Karrion up.
Possibly,
straight away to take the title off, and that's a good way to push him straight into the main event of Raw, isn't it?
Yeah, and Raw would need him more than SmackDown would.
100%, yeah, 100%.
They need top guys. They need people around that main event scene. What are they doing at the minute? At the minute with Cross, obviously he's going after Escobar.
Yeah,
which is going to be an awesome feud. As long as it's not a squash match, it could be brilliant. So. I don't know what they're planning there, but that's part of the enjoyment.
Yeah,
around WrestleMania season, post Rumble.
I'm 100% with you with Edge's return. I think obviously part of the discussions in terms of whether he should have won it or not, we had that back and forth as well. I know one of the feelings was maybe that he'd be part-timer, but I'm very glad that he's not. He's openly said he's going to be on every single show leading up to WrestleMania, which is brilliant. And then obviously the Twitter stands come out and then complain that he's going to be an overkill and he's going to be on every show. You cannot win one way or another. WWE cannot win. I think I would have liked to see someone get pushed into the main event, but I think my concern with WWE at the moment is they're really struggling to keep that person in there after they've done it. Like, Jey Uso's disappeared. No one knows why. No one has any idea.
Wasn't even in the Rumble.
No one knows.
Yeah.
They reckon he's injured, but we still don't know what. Big E's lost a lot of momentum since taking that IC title. The Apollo Crews feud hasn't developed at all.
Yeah.
I think as much as I like him coming out and doing the hand clap and stuff that he used to do in his music's okay, I just feel like in New Day he just had something else. whether it was the dynamic with the others, he was more him. Obviously, I still want him to get that push, but anyway, this is about Edge. But yeah, Edge is. I felt like he deserved it. It was good to see. It was really emotional for him. I think, to be honest, the Bianca Belair win had more of an impact on me than Edge's.
Yeah,
I'll
same.
be honest.
Yeah,
especially when she started crying on the mic and stuff. That was huge, and fair play to WWE for pushing her into that spot. But yeah, what we'll do now, we're going to go straight into Edge's top 5 most iconic moments in the eyes of It's Our House Pod, and we shall start with number 5. And Mr. Dees, you brought this to the table, so I'm going to let you start with this one.
Yeah, I think this is a forgotten one. But for me, I can't even remember what year this would have been around. Maybe like mid 2000s, something like that, 2004, 2005. Edge was probably at the height of his popularity. He just started his whole relationship with Lita. I think this was sort of around the time where we were starting to get more of a sense of we could go on the internet and find out secrets and things going on backstage and breaking kayfabe and all that kind of stuff. And obviously it came out that he was having this affair, real life affair with Lita behind Matt's back. I loved his feud with Matt because how old would I have been then? I think I would have been about 15, 16. So I was a big wrestling fan, but I wasn't particularly in the know. I didn't, WWE have always been so good at blurring the lines between real life and kayfabe and story and pretend. So I was watching there. I think you could go as far as saying it was a blood feud.
Yeah.
Because it was so personal and literally bloody.
Yeah, Matt had just been released, if I remember rightly, and he got brought back because of this feud.
Yeah. I think he got released not long after the affair came out, if that's right.
Yeah.
Came back for the feud, so obviously it was something that he signed off on because he got him his job back.
Yeah.
Every bit of this, every segment, every backstage attack was just tinged with that extra little bit of realism, and
physical.
Obviously, I think looking back at it now, I think Matt probably wasn't that bothered. Maybe him and Lita are on their way apart from each other anyway, but the fact that he was still willing to work with Edge for a prolonged period of time in the ring, backstage segments, they must have passed each other. They must have talked. Matt doesn't care anymore. He's got his crazy wife and constantly popping out kids. So, I don't know how long after Lita he met, what's her name? Rebby.
Yeah, Rebby.
But yeah, man, this feud is one of the first, other than Austin and Brock, feuds like that, the big feuds. This is one of my favorite feuds of my childhood. One of the most iconic images I can remember is when Matt was going over Edge in the corner on the turnbuckle and legitimately smashed his face on the top of it and just blood everywhere. I think, did the referee stop the match?
I think he did, but I think he just carried on, didn't he? I think that was the push.
Yeah, I think he just, through the adrenaline of it. It was brilliant. I was watching the whole thing constantly, just like, is this real? Has this been sanctioned? Do they hate each other? Is he gonna kill him? It was brilliant. I think it's a really underrated one. Edge has had so many big moments, like both Rumbles, everything that we're going to go on and talk about after this, and all of his great rivalries. This is really forgotten about, but I think it really helped develop Edge's character of not giving a fuck about other people's feelings, about the rated R superstar, when they had that whole sort of like sex and violence feel to it. It was a bit grittier, and I think it showed what Edge could do in terms of promo as well, and
definitely
the live sex celebration and just being controversial. I think it was not nearly as well remembered as it should be.
No, you're spot on. I think it was definitely the defining thing for me in terms of, around that time he was getting the main event push. There wasn't that much in terms, especially on Raw, because they did the brand splits and stuff back then as well. Raw was a little bit lackluster in terms of talent. Obviously I know you had like Randy Orton and John Cena, but main event, you'd lost a lot of your big hitters. So they needed someone to come in and kind of take that spot. And I think obviously the other matches and the mentions we're going to talk about, I think all of these combined at a great time for him in order to get him, right at the spot that he deserved. And his feud with Matt shows that personal feuds matter a lot to fans. Because you said around the internet time, I knew about it because I was Googling it on the internet and I was going, fucking hell, this is real. I get to see this every week. Wonder what he's going to do this week. He's going to smash his head in, the lot. But I think it really just pushed Edge away as well, because you stop thinking about Edge and Christian then. You stop thinking about the tag team division. I know we won IC titles and all that type of stuff, but there was always that in the back of the head. Whereas I think people started thinking, Edge is a knobhead, isn't he? Edge is a prick. I can't believe Edge is doing this to people. And it took him away from that character of Edge and Christian, because the concertos and stuff, yes, they're all heel related and all that, but this is different when you're inflicting on a man's personal life. That's a different ball game altogether. And they both knew they had gold. I think it's a shame Matt didn't come off better as a result of it all, but Edge certainly did. Certainly did.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head then, because it was so. It's something that not necessarily to that extreme that we've all been through and can relate to, but we've all had girlfriends, we've all had friends who fancy our girlfriends and stuff like that, and I can personally say that I've been out with girls who've ended up going out with my best mates at the time just after we'd split up and stuff like that. So it's sort of relatable. Even if you've not been through it, I think it's relatable because you can really feel how shit that would be.
Yeah.
We've all felt shitty emotions like that, or a girlfriend's left us, or we've left somebody, or whatever. So you know how much that hurts, and to see it playing out on TV, and as I keep saying, not knowing if it's real, not knowing if it's fake, not knowing how much they're putting into it, I think that's what made it so special.
Definitely.
And you genuinely felt bad for Matt as well.
Yes, obviously, getting his job back, you were thinking, because if I remember rightly, he came back and he started attacking him and stuff backstage, but he wasn't signed again with WWE. So it was all like, oh my God, is Matt, is he just breaking into these places and attacking them?
Oh shit, their security.
Yeah, exactly. It was really good to see. Obviously all that, bygones are bygones, and they've both moved on with completely different people and lived their lives. But I think it's, whenever I think of Edge, it's one of the things that definitely pops into my mind of why I watched him so much growing up. I think it was definitely a defining moment in terms of the Brood and Edge and Christian and all that stuff moving to the side, and him fully being not even main event maybe at that time, but just right in the middle of a very strong mid card, with Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle, people like that. He was right in the middle of those mixes, and to be mentioned alongside those, massive.
Yeah, some of the all-time greats.
Exactly.
Now he's gone on to become an all-time great.
Exactly. And that's why it's number 5 on our list. But we shall move on to the next one, which is number 4, obviously. And this is going back to what you had. The Brood. You had this brilliant group, Gangrel, Christian. Gangrel was technically the leader. I don't really think it kind of bled and changed as time went on, but it led into them versing the Hardys, which then brought in the Dudleys. And then we had 2 of the best TLC matches in the history of all time. And we're specifically talking about TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17 here.
When am I not talking about TLC 2? Exactly. Wake up talking about it.
Deez's favorite match of all time. But what we're going to try and do here is we're going to focus specifically on Edge. And obviously, Deez, you can go into it in a second. I just wanted to say from my point of view, I think what really helped with this, and if you watch a lot of the backstage stuff, or, you read a lot of the spoiler sheets and stuff online, what really helped is that there were 6 men in this match. Matt and Jeff, Devon and Ray, and then Edge and Christian. And after this match, some of these people are going to get pushed into the main event scene. And I think coming out of it, the people involved in the spear were always going to be the main event scene, Jeff and Edge. And for that match to, if you didn't have Austin and Rock, that's the match of that pay-per-view by far.
Absolutely.
So yeah, go D's, go.
Yeah, no, like you hit the nail on the head there by saying like the two guys that were involved in that moment are the ones that went on to get that big push. But that's not obviously to demean anything that the other four guys did, because they all took massive bumps. I can't remember. It must have been Christian and Bubba that went through the four tables that were stacked up outside when they came off the ladder. Nasty bumps. Obviously, Jeff did the swanton off the top of the ladder. I think that was on Devon and Christian. I think that might have been on the tables out by the barricade.
For a while.
So yeah, I watched it for at least an hour. So to be fair to all of those guys, they all took massive bumps. But obviously the moment that we're talking about as number 4 is Edge spearing Jeff as he was dangling from the belts in the middle of the ring. What I said about the last one about the feud with Matt being one of the most iconic rivalries from my childhood as a wrestling fan, this was possibly the most iconic moment as a wrestling fan for me. I would have been, quick maths, 12, 2001, so I would have been about 11 or 12, yeah. Watching this, I already loved wrestling. I was already a big fan. As I said before, the Hardys and Edge, they were a little bit different, a little bit sort of like, I was getting into that sort of like grungy emo phase of my life that I'm still in now at 31. So obviously Matt and Jeff, Edge, Christian with the Brood, they're all a little bit different, a little bit gothic, a little bit vampire-esque, a little bit weird, and that's really, really appealed to me. So to see two of my favourite guys risk life and limb in what is still, still probably my favourite spot of all time.
Yeah.
JR's commentary
on a WrestleMania
really,
thing, isn't it? It's always going to be on a WrestleMania promo at any time.
Yeah, on a montage. Yeah, you'll always see it. What was it? I think it was probably about 5-6 years ago. They did probably around WrestleMania 30. Actually, they did a vote on WWE.com, and it was voting for the greatest WrestleMania moment ever, not match or finish, just moment. That was in there. Like 4 moments from TLC 2
exactly
the Swanton Bomb off the top, which really goes to show you how much people remember this match and remember that moment. And when he speared him, like I say, JR on commentary, most iconic moments have got JR's voice alongside them, helping to make it that bit more special and that bit more what's the word I'm looking for, dramatic. You know, with the spear hits the mat, the way Edge sells it by like bouncing back up like ooh, and then pow back down. The crowd went insane. When every time I watch back WrestleMania 17, we always think that the crowd was incredible throughout, but there were large portions of that event where the crowd were pretty silent. They weren't as pumping and bouncing as everybody likes to think back and remember. But for that moment, everyone was like, "Oh my God, we've just watched a man get murdered." Didn't expect that tonight. And I think that's another one of those moments that really made you think, wow, shit, Edge is, ready for those big moments, for those big spots. He's happy to go above and beyond. One of my favorite things about TLC 2, and this is something I always say as well, is you had 6 guys. Obviously, the booking and the writing wasn't as intense as it is now, where they're booking every fucking breath that you take, and then, every syllable that comes out of your mouth has to be written 100 times. Those 6 guys were put in that room. They sat down together and they booked that match between themselves. There was no interference. There would have been a little bit, obviously, okaying it past Vince and that, but they booked that match themselves. They choreographed it themselves. Edge will have said, I want to jump off a 15-foot ladder and spear you in the middle of the air, and I might kill you. I might kill myself. He could have completely shattered his kneecaps. He could have done anything in that moment, but he was willing to take that risk to really show the fans that he was ready for those big moments, for those big talking points, to show management and show Vince and the writing team and whoever that he was ready for those moments. So it's not just an incredible visual, which it is obviously an incredible visual. That was the last time that tag team wrestling was incredible.
Yeah.
And it's one of those moments that makes me realize how much I love and loved still do love tag team wrestling, but I, like you said at the start there, I knew in that moment, like, yeah, Jeff and Edge are destined for big things. Bubba and Devon, I love them, but they were never top tier singles guys. Obviously, Bubba Ray went on to be in other companies. Christian, I always felt bad for Christian because he was the better promo and he was probably the better actual wrestler.
He's
I
brilliant
tweeted
at
this a few
TNA as
days
well.
ago. Oh, one of TNA's best signings. I think
Yeah.
without Christian, they would have been in the mud for a lot longer than they were.
Definitely.
But yeah, just
Yeah.
that moment is incredible. There's not much more I can say about it.
No, I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. And that's why it's number 4 on our list. It was the defining moment in that match. And it was one of the moments that everyone will always remember for WrestleMania season every year.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Absolutely.
Fully agree. So next we'll move on to our number 3 spot. And this is the defining moment of his returning career, Royal Rumble 2020. And I think for me, the reason why it's so defining, obviously you're coming back from an injury. It's 10 years since you made the announcement of quitting. If you haven't seen the documentary, I would advise every single one of you to go onto the network and watch it, because it really gives a good background into his thoughts, his wife's thoughts, his children. Could he do it? But as soon as his music hit, and we all had an idea. Again, the spoilers were out there. There was talks of it. It doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter if as much as you try to hide it. A lot of people knew about the Hardys coming back when they did, but as soon as that hit and he was stood there and you could see the tears in his eyes, it was everything. As you said, for us fans who grew up in that era, because right now we're so picky of the product. It's our job to be picky of the product. We have to pick out the bad. We have to pick out the good. We have to really analyze it, because it helps us with the podcast and it helps us with getting guests and things like that. But back then, you didn't care. You didn't care about any of that. So when Edge was doing all these things, it was just, I can't wait to see Edge. Can't wait to see what he does this week. And then, as you said, when he made the announcement to retire, it's one of the hardest. It hit me a lot more than like Daniel Bryan. It hit me a hell of a lot more than Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
Because I know Daniel Bryan had won the IC title, but Edge retained, the world heavyweight title at the time. You could see it killed him. And then I think the difference is Daniel Bryan stayed on our TVs. Edge didn't. Edge disappeared.
Yeah, of course.
And he came back and he's little segments, little laugh and joke stuff with Christian, but everyone thought it just wasn't happening. So to see him come out, and then even his performance in the Rumble, brilliant. What did it mean to you?
Oh, everything. Honestly, it really did. This year's Rumble was obviously very different. We live for those moments at the Rumble. We live for those returns. We live for those debuts and the unexpected moments, like the hurricanes and stuff like that. The funny little moments. MVP coming back.
Carlito.
We live for
ripped.
Carlito.
Jesus.
Yeah, we live for those little things because we love to speculate what they're going to mean going forward. We didn't know when MVP came back that he was going to get offered a producer role and then end up being on TV, and then the Hurt Business would be born and be the top attraction on Raw. The Rumble can lead to so many, not just moments, but opportunities and future storylines, and it's just so important for the next year. It really sets that year in motion. So yeah, Edge returning. Obviously, his music hit, and it was a big moment, but it was a fucking beautiful moment. Like you say, I had an idea he was coming back. I always at Rumble season try and avoid everything, basically. Avoid the internet, avoid Twitter, avoid whatever. And just like when the Hardys came back at WrestleMania, it just didn't matter that I already knew. I got shivers. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I had tears in my eyes when he came back. The Hardys, like you say, the Hardys just left and they came back. Edge was done for. As far as we know, he was done for. And even the spear on Elias, when he did that, it didn't make me think, oh, he could come back and wrestle. I just thought, it's just a spear.
Yeah.
It's just a one-off, and it was a nice pop for the fans because he was in Canada when he did it. So, yeah, his performance in the match was incredible. I think, actually, you know what? I think this is a good point as well. It felt even better because of what had happened before it in the Rumble match. Like that Rumble match, Royal Rumble 2020, there have been some epic Rumbles. 2001, 92. This year's was pretty good, 2021. But for me, 2020 is the best of all time. The writing and the booking for it was incredible because for the first, what would it have been, probably 15 to 20 minutes,
Yeah,
I was so fucking angry. So angry. And that's as somebody who really likes Brock Lesnar. But I was so angry because I saw him embarrass John Morrison in literally seconds, eliminate Lee and Strowman when he shouldn't have. That whole cool little moment with Biggie and Kofi, with Kofi trying to get redemption and Rey Mysterio getting involved with them. You know, it was booked to perfection. Obviously, Drew came in, eliminated him with the help of Ricochet. And after that point, you were sort of like, okay, right, well, that's probably about as dramatic as this match is going to be. Let's just sit back and enjoy it. And then, like, 3 or 4 entries later, they're like, who's it going to be? And then you hear, how does his music start?
You think you know me.
You think you know me, that's it. The crowd went
Alter
insane.
Bridge. Big shout out.
Alter Bridge, yeah, fucking love Alter Bridge. Yeah, the crowd went insane, and that pop just gave me shivers. Nobody expected it to lead on to what it's led on to. Same with MVP. We just sort of thought it was going to be a one and done thing. Maybe appear on Raw the next night. You know, you had that nice little moment with Randy Orton, rated RKO, and he got to eliminate Orton. He went down to the final 3, didn't he? Edge, eliminated by Roman.
Yeah. Because everyone booed and then Drew eliminated. It was brilliant. Again, perfect writing by WWE because Roman was kind of in that middle ground where everyone was like, oh God, not Roman again. So by eliminating and then getting eliminated by Drew, it really helped the writing. It was great writing. It really was. Yeah,
from start to finish, great writing. And like I say, it's the Rumble is all about what it's going to lead to for the rest of the year. Nobody knew what to expect. We didn't expect him to come out to the ring and get the shit kicked out of him by Orton and the Concerto, and that lead on to what has just the other night on Raw ended up being the trilogy of matches. I still think we're going to get another one further down the line because of the dodgy finish there with Alexa.
Yeah.
So, like, 9 years ago, 5 years ago, even 1 year ago, did you think that the Edge was going to win the 2021 Royal Rumble and be challenging at WrestleMania for any title? No.
Absolutely no, definitely not.
It's when I see, when people say, oh, you're 30, you're 31, you're 34, whatever, and you're still watching wrestling. Why do you watch wrestling? This is why I watch wrestling. Because what would I be doing if I wasn't watching wrestling? First of all, nothing. It's fucking lockdown. But like, what are you doing that's better than what I'm doing in watching wrestling? You're probably watching reality shows. You're watching fucking Love Island. You're watching movies, watching Netflix, whatever. Nothing makes you feel the way that wrestling does. Nothing gets you as invested as wrestling does in the characters, in the storylines. I don't remember the last time I've ever been as invested in a return and as emotional in a return. Even the Hardys with Jeff and Matt being my favorite tag team of all time. Jeff being my favorite wrestler of all time. What they did with that, like the writing was so good. It got you so invested. It just felt so important for Edge on a personal level to get that closure.
Yeah. And I think the good thing about it as well is that, if you're talking like you did there about the Hardys, is when they came back, the questions around the Hardys were they going to be a tag team? Was Matt Hardy going to be, the deletion version? There was a lot of questions about their characters and their future, and I think that tarnished it a bit because you didn't know what was going to happen in terms of them as a team, so you couldn't really get invested. It was great to see them back, great to see them win the Raw Tag Team titles, but after that, it was a case of what's next. Whereas as soon as Edge came out, as you said, we all thought it was a one and done. So when he came out in that Rumble, and he looked as sharp as he did, and he got down to the final 3, and then he comes out, it's a different ball game. Then you start thinking, has he got the legs in him? And then of course he gets injured. I think what was his pectoral muscle or his arm or something like that got ripped from the bone.
Yeah, something like that.
And then he's out again
during the greatest wrestling match ever.
Of all time. It wasn't, but it was a good.
It was
match.
all right. It was better than we expected.
You just can't call them 2 the greatest wrestlers of all time. Sorry, you just can't. You can't have You know what I mean? When you've got people like, as much as I still don't like him, but Jericho, when he does holds and things like William Regal, they're wrestlers to me. If anything, Randy Orton and Edge are just fighters. But yeah,
fighters and characters.
Yes, exactly. And then when he got injured,
characters.
Again, you're thinking, he's coming back. He's finishing the fuse with Orton. And I think if the Fiend storyline wasn't there, I think we will be getting Edge and Orton at Mania. No title involved. I think it will be that. But I think they've booked and put so much time and investment in the Fiend storyline that, and as you said, with the Keith Lee element, because there was rumors he was going to win the Rumble, with taking Keith Lee out of it, who do you pick that you haven't got a storyline for? Because it looks like they might have storylines for a lot of their top roster. So Edge winning makes perfect sense for this year. But for the defining third career moment for us, it definitely is the 2020 Rumble return. Last time we had a crowd of that size. Last time we heard a pop like that. And I can see what they're doing in terms of WrestleMania and giving them the moment again, giving the crowd, the fans the moment again. Because, as soon as he comes out and his music hits, 25,000 people are going to go absolutely insane for him. So that's number 3.
For me, I'm just to touch on that. I think everyone's saying like, he deserves it, or they needed to give him that moment. For me, honestly, even as a big fan of Edge, I don't think he particularly needed or even particularly deserved that moment. A lot of wrestlers have had to retire. They know the risks, they know the injuries, they know that their bones are going to be ground down over the years. He had already won. Had he won everything? Was he a Grand Slam? I feel like he might. He was at least a Triple Crown. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he was Grand Slam or not, but he he'd done it all. He was at the top of his game. He'd won at WrestleMania. They could have had him lose the title at WrestleMania and go into the retirement, but they let him retain in a great match. They let him go out on top, just not on his own terms. I don't think that necessarily meant that he had to come back and win and have another title reign. Yeah. If he's going to be as full-time as he claims he is, then that's brilliant. Age doesn't really mean anything to me. He's 47. Yeah. So what if he's 47? People still want Cena to come back for another run.
Exactly. And you can always structure a match to make it work, can't you? And that's the thing.
Exactly.
You just make it a lot slower pace, which is what he's done now. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and protect him in tag matches. Yep. Put him back with Christian for a little bit, for another feel-good story.
Yeah.
Of E&C coming back together. So I wouldn't go as far as saying that I think he needed to win it or deserve to have another title reign per se. But I think, as we've touched on a couple of times, a lot of it comes down to COVID, who is available, if Keith Lee has or hasn't got it,
Yeah. And as you said, I think Vince is very smart in terms of he knows, just like I said, just like what they did with NXT, knowing that they had AEW had their beach bash, by announcing him on NXT, by announcing him to be number 1 in the Rumble, it gets eyes. It gets eyes on the show, and by putting him in the main event, people are going to watch now to find out who he picks. So it's genius from Vince's side, but as we said, from a fan perspective, we question. But
I'll say, touching on the Rumble, I don't think they needed to announce him and Orton as 1 and 2.
No, I think Edge could have announced himself as 1. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I don't think.
And then we would have been like, "Oh, could it be Orton? Could it be Christian? Could it be whoever?"
Yeah.
I understand why they did.
And then Orton was out. Then Orton disappeared. Then for all the match.
For like 40 minutes.
Yeah. So you didn't really need it, but that's number 3 on our list. Edge's return, 2020 Rumble. So before we proceed to 2 and 1 and our honorable mentions, we'll give another big shout out to our sponsor. That's wrestlinpins.bigcartel.com. wrestlinpins.bigcartel.com. WRASSLIN. They have pins like The Undertaker, Stone Cold, Bret the Hitman Hart, Razor Ramon, and much, much more. Just head on over and enter the promo code IOHPOD15 for 15% off your order. That's IOHPOD15 for 15% off your order. And remember to follow on all social media, because they give out all giveaways, theories about the next pins, the lot. So give them much love and tell them that we sent you. Also, head on over to our Pro Wrestling Tee store. That's Pro Wrestling Tees / It's Our House pod. And we've got t-shirts with this guy on here. We're going to get more on there. We've got some text t-shirts on there as well. So head on over. Every shirt you buy really does help us out as creators. It really does. So thank you very much. One and all, we love you all. So we'll move on to number 2. And this was my choice when we spoke about it. Because... And I'll tell you straight off the bat, it's King of the Ring, 2001. It was Kurt Angle versus Edge, and Edge was victorious. And the reason why I thought this should be so high up the list is because it was at a time when King of the Ring meant something. It really, like, everyone who, going back to Austin, when he won King of the Ring, from then on in, I think everyone who won it, there was always a feeling that you had a main eventer right on your hands there. And during that match, there was interference by Shane, there was interference by Christian, because I think Edge was still with Christian at the time. But it really helped define him as a future main eventer. We had The Rock win it, and he went on next year to win the title. We had Austin win it, and obviously he went on to win the title. We had Booker T, who went on, who became the 6-time champion. We've had so many people who've won King of the Ring to go on to do big things. And I think especially the last... we get it every other third year or something now when the board just throw King of the Ring in.
Yeah. Like it.
And we've had, people win it since who've got on to do nothing. Baron Corbin is one of them. Even though we are, to be honest, we are fans of him on the show. He's
huge fan.
Very good heel. Very good talent. I just think I hate the King of the Ring monarch.
Huge fan of Baron Corbin.
Yes,
but not King Corbin.
Yes.
Anymore.
So the reason why this is number 2 on our list is for me, it is the first step. You had the TLC, brilliant TLC. He might have had some title runs in the middle of that, middle card titles, but King of the Ring really shows that management has your back. Really does has your back. And if I remember rightly, that led on to the hair versus hair match with Kurt Angle. And then from then on in, that's when the Rated R Superstar was born shortly after that. So, what are your thoughts?
Again, completely agree. King of the Ring, like you say, it used to be so important, and now it's just a throwaway tournament to put a load of mid-carders in and give them something to do. King Corbin has been King of the Ring. He's been king, for 16, nigh on 17 months now. And boy, have we felt every month of that 17-month run. Back in the day, it never felt like it outstayed its welcome. Like
Booker T made it so well. Booker T ran with that.
Yeah.
King of the Ring monarch. Yeah, so he was good. Brilliant with it.
And he still brings it back out every now and then, whereas nobody else really does. You know, Edge never mentions that he was King of the Ring. The Rock, Austin, none of them mention it, but King Booker did it so well that he can still live off that gimmick. We always talk about the importance of mid-card titles, the Intercontinental title, maybe not so much in the last few years, maybe up to the last 5 or 10 years. The Intercontinental title has always been sort of like your stepping stone. You become an Intercontinental champion, you are destined to become world champion. That's not necessarily been the case recently. Look at the likes of Sami Zayn. Probably never going to go on to be world champion. Whereas King of the Ring, like you said, if you were King of the Ring, you were going to be destined for big things. Would Stone Cold have been as big a deal without King of the Ring and without saying Austin 316? Possibly not. He just looked like
joining the corporation.
A mid-card guy. Exactly, yeah. It did so much for everybody. It led into that SmackDown 6 period of time where SmackDown was always the pure wrestling show.
Didn't Kurt Angle win it as well?
Yeah, he did. The SmackDown 6 was essentially... SmackDown was always the pure wrestling show. Yeah. You watched Raw for the glitz and the glamour and the over-the-top production, but SmackDown was where you went to watch the likes of Rey Mysterio and Edge and Eddie and Kurt Angle and who would have been the other two? Benoit and...
Technically, it was the Rock show.
Yeah, it was the Rock show, absolutely. But yeah, those guys were billed as being the future and the future world champions. And SmackDown was always so much more entertaining because you had guys that were enjoyable to watch, who could do a bit more and were a bit more high flying. I think high flying and cruiserweight stuff was never really seen as a step down at the time. A lot of those cruiserweight guys and the light heavyweight and the European Championship guys could have been world champion, and they were world champion material. So yeah, it, like you said, like you touched upon, it catapulted Edge from sort of like the arse end of his Edge and Christian and the Brood time. It really showed him off as being a top singles guy, a top main eventer. One of the things that I love about Edge, and obviously you don't get this with your Brocks, you got it with your Cena, didn't really get it with Batista and people like that. Edge was always happy to drop back down. Like how we saw him then go on to be, he was a tag team with Big Show, wasn't he? And he was with obviously Randy Orton in Rated RKO. So even though Edge was one of those special wrestlers that even though he got up to the upper echelons of the company, he was always prepared to be in the mid-card scene, and you never saw him as he's been relegated to the mid-card scene.
Exactly.
It's a bit like a Daniel Bryan, it's only a matter of time before he's back up there.
Yeah.
Not like it's going to sound like I don't like Sami Zayn, but I really do like Sami Zayn. But one of those guys who is destined to just be in the middle of the card for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
King of the Ring, it never outstayed its welcome. You didn't see him as King Edge.
No.
Like, I don't remember him being King of the Ring. I remember him winning King of the Ring and going on to do great things with it, but not to the level of like a King Booker or King Corbin being shoved down your throat and stuff like that. So
it was more the exclamation mark from upper management that we have faith in you. And I think that's what King of the Ring definitely did for him and many others. But unfortunately, people like King Corbin, and we will mention obviously King Corbin and say it's not really. I mean, obviously one of the problems was I think he got in trouble when he won the Money in the Bank. He did some personal stuff, didn't he, that Vince basically punished him for by failing his cash in. I think it was online stuff. I can't remember now, but I know he got into some drama.
Probably. It normally is.
Yeah. And then since then, he's been kind of a consistent mid-card. As you said, with Edge, he could do anything. He can go from a main event at WrestleMania to being the first match on the card in a feud with Apollo Crews, and you'd still be like, he's going to make it work and he's going to do it well.
Yeah.
And I think
steal the show.
Exactly. And he's done it. I think the reason why that is the case is he's done it right. And King of the Ring was the start of that. He had TLC. We knew him as a tag team competitor. We knew him as a very good tag team competitor. Then, he went on to the single card and he still had Christian there, but then they had their great feuds when they split up, and Christian's on his own, and they had their great little feuds. But for me, I just think this defines. Back then, winning King of the Ring defines your career as we have faith in you. We have faith in you in the main event, and we have faith in you going forward. So that's why I put it down as our number 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah, it wasn't my favorite by any means, or even my personal most iconic, but in terms of what it meant for him and the show going forward, we talk about what it does for the wrestlers, but what it did for the show as well, and the general feel of SmackDown, and the perception of SmackDown, like I said, for being the show to go to if you wanted to see great wrestling.
Yep.
It did so much for the company moving forward, and it did a lot for other wrestlers as well. When Eddie and Chris Benoit were world champions, it opened people's eyes that you don't have to be 6'7" and covered in fucking steroid lumps and shit like that to be a world champion. You don't have to be a meathead. No. People like Edge really opened the door for the quote unquote smaller guys.
Yep, definitely. And now we're going to move on to our number 1 spot. And I wonder how many people would have chosen this, but it's definitely ours. And it will be the Money in the Bank first win and then cash in against John Cena at New Year's Revolution 2006. If you remember rightly, it was an elimination chamber for Cena. He just beat Carlito. Cage goes up. Vince McMahon comes out, says he's introducing the first cash-in ever of the Money in the Bank. Edge appears. Spear. I think he spears twice, if I remember rightly. And then he gets the 1, 2, 3. And I think, you know what always reminds me of that moment? And it's not even in coming out with Vince. It's not the chamber. It's not him spearing. It's when he's holding that title and he's crying as he looks at it. How many wrestlers these days do you see do that? Because I don't see many who, when they win that top gold, like Drew did.
No.
And it's memorable.
Yeah, Drew. Yeah.
I don't see many now doing that. And this might just be like, the little idiot from YouTube who will never ever get into a wrestling ring ever. But growing up as kids, that was what we wanted, wasn't it? That's what we wanted, to be in that ring, and we knew if we ever won that title, we would be like, "This is for you, Mom." You know what I mean? We knew we'd be like that.
Yeah.
So for me, that's always been. And then Lita jumped on him and was hugging him, and it was just, that was the final exclamation mark to his development into the main event scene.
Do you think maybe wrestlers just don't care as much anymore? Because thinking back to the olden days, the good old days, the first ones that come to mind, Shawn Michaels crying.
Yeah.
You know, the boyhood dream has come true.
Yeah.
What's the other one? I just thought of another one then as well. No, it's gone. But it was more commonplace back in like the late 80s, throughout the 90s, and maybe the early noughties, where they showed their emotion. So I don't know. Do they care less? Is it the era of social media and they don't want to be ridiculed, maybe? Or
I don't know. I mean, I think one of the I was going to say it might be because of how many titles they've got these days, but I think even back then we had two. I think we had two back then, didn't we? We had John Cena and the WCW title was
World Heavyweight Champion, and then WCW. Yeah, before they were unified by Jericho.
Yeah, so I think it would have been after them, wouldn't it? Because John Cena had it. It was just John Cena's spinny title. So maybe it just meant more because that was the title of the show. But you got to remember, back then we only had WWE for us. I know WCW existed, but again, does anyone really care who their champion was? Because I don't think anyone really did. When you talk about WCW, you don't go, "Oh, remember?" I mean, you remember like the finger point of doom and stuff, but you don't like Goldberg's run. But no one goes outside of probably like Hulk Hogan. Remember when that title changed? Remember, it's always about a storyline moment for WCW. Whereas WWE, for me, a lot of my moments were like, Rock getting screwed, WrestleMania 17 for the title. Austin made the title relevant. And I think everyone after him made the title relevant,
Yeah, and it might be that it's been sort of hot potatoed around a lot over the years.
There's
maybe
no consistency, is there? Really?
No, when a title's handed around that many times, and I think that might be part of why tag team wrestling feels like it doesn't matter as much anymore. It's with every couple of months the titles are handed to somebody else. There's no long-term reigns anymore. Like they've even had Drew lose the title unnecessarily within this last year. So maybe that's the case. Maybe it just means a bit less. But anyway, sorry, that was me going off on a tangent.
No. It's exactly why we need to talk about it, because the reason why it's so defining for Edge's career was from that day forward, people saw him as the main eventer. He'd been in some great feuds. He's had some great mid-card challenges. He's had some great tag team matches, as we've mentioned. But how, especially these days, and we always have this discussion, how do you push a mid-card into a main event? They did it with Edge. They did it with perfectly. And that's when, again, Money in the Bank meant something. It was always whoever had the Money in the Bank is going to cash in and win. Yes, we had some fails, but we always found out via social media there was reasons for those failures, whether, Vince just picked the wrong guy, knew it, so you were going to fail when you cashed in, and maybe a big part of it has got to go against The Miz, because when he won it, it really wasn't as loved as Vince maybe thought. So going on from then, and then he was like, well, we need to give it to big people big names going forward. Then when you have someone like Otis wins it, again, it waters it down again. So it's really difficult these days, just like with King of the Ring, just like with Money in the Bank. It's like what Impact Wrestling did with the X Division title. If you won the X Division title, you used to be able to cash that in. That was a cash-in title where you go, I'm going to face you now. They've scrapped that, and I think it's right to do so. I love Money in the Bank. Money in the Bank is probably one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time.
Yep, same.
But I don't know whether I'm just not invested in it anymore, because the names they usually put in it, I don't really care about anymore. And it's really hard for me. Like, out of that, like the matches themselves are always good. They're always good spots. What they did this year or last year, sorry, with the not the Performance Center, the headquarters.
With the towers.
Yeah, was brilliant. I mean, they could have done it a million different ways. They decided to go right. The Undertaker thing worked. They said, all these recorded matches worked. So they were going, right, let's do it this way. And it worked really well. Again, the winner probably wasn't anyone's choice. No one bloody saw that one coming.
No. 2020, I think we can pretty much bin off the 2020 Money in the Bank. It was really well done in a really difficult period for WWE, obviously. But fucking hell have they mishandled it since the actual event. The night after, they make Asuka champion because obviously Becky ended up announcing her pregnancy. But I don't know. I've never been a pregnant woman. It might surprise you. So in terms of announcing a pregnancy, I would have thought Becky would have told Vince in advance, and then they would have made that plan like, oh, you can announce it on Raw in front of the fans, blah, 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 blah. Surely they would have had, somebody must have had the sense to think of something better than just, oh, actually, the title was in the briefcase all along.
Like, she wouldn't.
Because if we suspend disbelief just for a minute, you win that briefcase. If I win that briefcase, I'm opening it because I'm curious.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, this is a bit heavy for just a bit of paper.
It's rattling.
Sounds a little bit metallic in there. What's going on here? You'd open it, and like, all of a sudden, I've got the title about, oh shit, what's happened? And even more so, like Otis winning Money in the Bank would have been the right decision with fans. Obviously, it wouldn't have been within the Titan Towers match. It would have been very different. He was riding a wave of momentum. The whole Mandy storyline was fantastic. One of my favorite angles of probably the last decade. It was incredible. The whole reveal of the hacker and all that stuff and the betrayal. Oh, it was masterfully done. Such good writing and good booking. But yeah, they really mishandled it. They didn't know what to do with Otis. They didn't know if they were going to get fans back or not. They then booked themselves into a corner by him being on SmackDown, and you've got Roman back as champion. Otis was never going to get the belt off of Roman, let's be honest. Equally, I don't think it was believable for him to go to Raw and take it off Drew either. Gave it to The Miz. Miz loses it, give it back to The Miz a week later. Absolute fucking catastrophe of a year for Money in the Bank. But going back to Edge, because this is about Edge, remember? Like you said, back then it meant something. It's very similar to King of the Ring. And it's similar looking down at my list, We've said the feud with Matt made people see him as more of a main eventer. The spear on Jeff made people... All of these moments really made you look at Edge in a different light with more potential to elevate up to the top of the card.
Yeah.
But all of those things before, the feud with Matt, the spear on Jeff, the Rumble return, the King of the Ring, even though they made you see him as a main eventer, they obviously didn't immediately lead to him being a main eventer. King of the Ring, he was still around the mid card after that. Like most of them are, they don't go straight to the top the following night or anything. The Rumble return, obviously, it's taken a year for him. The injuries haven't helped. They might have been different, but it's taken a full year for him to get into the title scene by winning this year's Rumble.
Yep.
What else was there? The spear on Jeff, obviously, after that, was still very much in the tag team scene because they won the titles in that match, obviously, so they had to carry on.
Yep.
And the feud with Matt, I don't think Edge was holding a belt at the time, was he? Because the matches weren't for a title or anything. It was just Rated R Superstar with Lita, a whole Matt rivalry. So So even though we've sort of alluded to how all of these things made him feel like a main eventer and feel more important, obviously the cash-in was the first time that he actually achieved that. So
Yep.
you know that this could only be this is the only possible option for number one. This
Yep.
was Edge's most defining moment because he was world champion, and it doesn't get any more defining than that. It's obvious. Winning the World Cup, it doesn't get any better than that in football, or winning the Premier League or the Champions League. You know, he achieved his dreams, his goals. He was the top guy of the company. He was the face of the company. Well, one of the faces, because obviously Cena was still around. It was a massive moment because it was the first time we'd ever seen Money in the Bank cashed in. There was obviously,
how's it work
as fans? Yeah, exactly. Like how does it work? Where does he have to do it? Obviously, they explained the shit out of it, but until you actually saw it happen,
exactly.
You were never sure who's he going to cash it in on. It set the foundations for what Money in the Bank would do for the next 15, 16 years.
Yeah,
you know,
it's crazy. It's been around that much, hasn't it?
That's insane. I know. It really doesn't feel like all that long ago that Edge did it.
And he went on then to have some of the best feuds of his career.
Yeah. Well, I think what I was going to say is it's not even just that he cashed in the Money in the Bank. It's the fact that he cashed it in on Cena.
Yeah. It was
obviously it was within the storyline. It wasn't his choice, but to have the faith in him to take the title off of the top guy, the last real true star that the company have created in the last 15, 20 years, since The Rock, since Austin left, and since Brock was at his peak, for him to take the belt off him. And obviously it wasn't really the age of social media and the internet too much at that time, but me amongst my friends and amongst my peers and that, nobody questioned it.
No.
Nobody was like, oh, wow, shit, he's taking it off Cena. He's not as good as Cena. That wasn't a conversation. No. And looking back on it now, that's still the case. I never have ever looked back at it and thought, should he have taken it off Cena? Yeah, yes, he should.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, that did wonders for him. That's like taking the title off of Brock now. Drew beating Brock.
Yes, exactly.
Drew winning the title would have been huge no matter who he took it off, because he deserved it like not many people have ever deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
But to take it off Brock, the enemy, the guy that we all hate, to take it off Cena, the top guy who was untouchable and invincible and bulletproof, it was just massive. Absolutely massive.
100%. And that's why it's number one on our list for Edge's most defining career moments of all time. So, and what we want to do now is just go on to some honorable mentions. I'll make a quick start. So we've mentioned them a few times, but obviously the introduction of the Brood was huge for his career. You know, teaming him up with Gangrel, who is quite an unsung person in the business. Doesn't really get a lot of mentions. I remember him. I love the whole vampire, dark, edgy story, and it worked really well with the Hardys, as you said at the time, because they were basically the same, but more poppy in terms of their introduction, whereas the Brood were just dark and angry and aggressive. Some obviously bled into some of the best tag team matches we've ever seen in the history of WWE. And coming in from the crowd and stuff when they left, it was just brilliant. Loved his music back then, loved his character, and so the Brood gets a mention from me. What about you?
Yeah. I think that's similar to what I was saying about why I love the Hardys so much, because they were so different and they were. I guess the best word to describe them was weird. Nobody really dressed like that at the time, especially like I'm from the Midlands and I'm from Coventry. Not exactly not exactly the culture capital of the world. Just chavs everywhere normally. So it was weird to see that, like the baggy jeans and the fishnet armband things and stuff like that, and the weird, almost like fetish like and bondage like clothes and tops and stuff. So I would have thought that Matt and Jeff would have worked better in that situation with the Brood than Edge and Christian would have, because they were just two pretty good looking athletic blonde guys. You wouldn't have expected that at all. But it worked really well. It was really weird. It was really different. It got people talking. Obviously there was some sort of like I don't know if controversial is the right word, but obviously all the stuff around like
the blood and the demonic side.
Yeah, the blood and demonic and biting people and almost like satanic sort of thing was a perfect fit for the Attitude Era. But you know, in 2021, you look back on it now and you think, bit weird. That wouldn't cut it in this day and age, would it?
No.
So yeah, it was just really cool, really different. Definitely one of the teams I remember most, factions, sorry, that I remember most of the Attitude Era.
Definitely. And then next we spoke about it briefly during his rated R era, but sex in the ring with Lita. Obviously a lot of things have come out since, you know, about Lita not wanting to do it. Vince basically saying you do it or you're fired. She was with Edge at that time, and obviously we saw chest area, some boobies. So they were on live TV in the middle of the ring.
Yeah, we did.
But it still is a defining moment for Edge's career.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd like that now. I don't think he wants it mentioned at all these days. But it is something when you think of Edge, when you think of races R, it pops into everyone's mind.
Yeah, when his kids are like, "Oh, Daddy, can we watch some of your stuff from the past?" He's like, "Yeah, but maybe oh no, 2006 isn't working. 2007, whatever it was. Yeah.
Skip that raw.
I was a horny boy at the time. I still am now, but Lita was my crush growing up as a kid. Man, I was in love with Lita. Still am now. At the time, I got to see her basically in lingerie. I was a big fan of the live sex celebration. Yeah, it was. It was
at a time though where it fit in, not fit in as in like we wanted to see it, but you know, you had Jerry Springer around that time. You had, you know, Vince was kissing every diva that ever existed. We had what was China's little mate called? She was stunning. The cat. What was her name? Do you remember? She used to have that little one with her, and they had that feud. Was it Miss Kitty?
Yeah.
Miss Kitty.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
She won the woman's title anyway, and she was having feuds where they were throwing each other in mud with just bra and panties on. So this was just so everyone is aware. This was happening across the board. This wasn't just a random event. But yeah, it was disgusting what we know now.
It's really soured the whole. Obviously, it's not the most fucking savory of things anyway, but it's really put a bit of a creepy twist on it. You know, Vince, we know Vince as a scumbag. He's always been a scumbag. He's brought us many happy memories and moments, but you know the guy's a piece of shit. At the end of the day,
he knows his power,
and that's just underlined it.
Yeah. So we'll move on quickly from that. One of the feuds that I think really defines his career as well, with his feud with Kurt Angle, the hair for hair match after the King of the Ring. I think, you know, Kurt Angle came in on fire, won title after title after title, even though no one really saw him at that time as a main event guy, but he just kept pushing himself right into that card. To the point where, you know, we had the 6-man Hell in a Cell where he came out with the title. He was a phenomenal talent. And then to work, you know, we always mention, you know, his match with Shane was kind of the same. That's when Shane was defined as someone who could really carry a match. And I think this kind of followed that pattern as well. It really showed what Edge is capable of on the mic. It showed what he's capable of, you know, for gimmick segments, and it really did open them up going forward. What do you think?
Yeah, and they complemented each other so well, because obviously the different styles. Kurt Angle and Benoit are like two of obviously the greatest technicians of all time, mat wrestlers with that amateur background and stuff. Obviously Edge is very much not that. He was more flashy and more out there and over the top, and they just, like I say, complemented each other so well. Their matches were always phenomenal, super entertaining. They were both incredible on the mic, you know, but like you say, they bounced off each other in their promos, you know. It really showed that side of Edge that I don't think we'd really seen too much of. We'd seen it in spurts here and there, but it really showed if he could go up against and hold his own with somebody like Angle. You know, we saw him over the years, ended up going against it with the likes of Cena, one of the greatest talkers of all time. I think that really helped to develop that.
Well, it had one of the
side Edge.
best back segments, didn't it, with the "I was stupid." Remember where they had the signs?
Cards, yeah.
Yeah,
That's literally what I was
cards.
just thinking about. Yeah.
It was just brilliant. It was a really defining moment. It shows Edge's funny side as well as what he could do in the ring. So that's a mention. Then we're going to go on to, obviously, anyone who works with this guy goes on to do brilliant things, unless you're A-Train, I think his name was.
Oh yeah,
and that's
Prince Albert.
Prince Albert, and that's the Undertaker. He has a great feud with the Undertaker, Hell in a Cell, amongst other things. I think as soon as Edge faced Undertaker, and as soon as Undertaker wanted to face Edge, I think it just made him.
Yeah, I'd agree. Nothing too flashy here, you know. They weren't match of the year contenders or anything like that, but good solid matches. And I think you hit the nail on the head by saying it's more the fact that Undertaker wanted to work with him.
Yeah,
you know, we've seen that over the years. Undertaker basically picks his opponents, picks who's going to end the streak. Like, you know, putting over AJ Styles by saying he's the HBK of his generation and stuff like that. You know, so it's another thing that did wonders for Edge because, you know, hanging with Cena, hanging with Batista, hanging with all these top guys is something in of itself. But the Undertaker's a whole. He's always been a whole extra level, you know, and that's coming from somebody who hasn't necessarily been the biggest Undertaker fan. You know, I like the American Badass, but generally speaking, I'm not that fussed by the Undertaker. But I still respect that he was basically in a league of his own, did wonders, has all that respect. To go up against him just meant that you were ready.
Yeah, and there was never, you know, I think with the Undertaker as well, going back to there, as you said, with respect, because I'm in the same category as you. I love seeing him on the show, but he was never what I kind of tuned in for. It was always The Rock, it was always Austin, it was always Triple H, people like that. So to see, you know, he never wanted to leave, he never threatened to leave. As Vince said, he was always the go-to guy. So when Taker picks you, Vince listens, and I think that again shows the faith that they had in Edge within that storyline, because obviously it went over 3-4 months. And yeah, it really helped his career. But I think that one of the defining moments has to be TLC, the first one. And the reason why we say that is, yes, it may not have had all the amazing, crazy moments of TLC 2, but this was the first time that we saw a match of this magnitude. We saw a match of this ability. We saw Edge's ability in that ring. We saw what he was really capable of, working with, you know, 5 other men who trusted each other. And we all knew after that match that as a tag team, because obviously we didn't know whether Edge would go on to have a single run at this point, but we knew as a tag team, Edge and Christian were there and they were set in stone. It wasn't the Brood anymore. It was Edge and Christian, and what could they do? And they came out as champions.
Yeah, TLC is all right, isn't it? Yeah. It's not bad. Yeah, take it or leave it, really.
It isn't bad. But yes, that's our top 5.
Nail on the head for all of them, especially the TLC one. It's holds such a special place in my heart. TLC 1, not so much, I'll be honest. Enjoyable, good match, really enjoyable. Definitely one of the best. But TLC 2, for all the run-ins and all the big spots and the danger and just the chaos of it all, is the top one for me. But like you say, like I always allude to, tag team wrestling is still my number one. I wish it could be what it used to be. It's what made me fall in love with wrestling. And when I think of tag team wrestling, I love the New Day. Don't know if I've mentioned that before. I love the Usos, but when I think of tag team wrestling, I think of the Hardys, I think of Edge and Christian, and I think of the Dudleys. It's just my go-to.
Yeah.
So, you know, even if they didn't have all these 5-star classic TLC crazy matches, one of the things that stands out for Edge for me the most is my childhood, because he was a massive, massive part of tag team wrestling.
Yep, and it's exactly why we wanted to do a whole show dedicated to the man, the Rated R Superstar, and possibly by the time everyone listens to this, and then a few months down the line, he might be our next WWE champion, Universal champion, or NXT champion. We are not sure, but you know, we're glad to see him back. And if you like things like this, let us know, because the one thing that we really love is fans' input. We want to hear what you want us to talk about. You know, we've got some really good things lined up. We want to talk about how the invasion angle should have been booked. We want to talk about, you know, different times of history in which it could have went one direction to the other, you know, NWO, the way they were booked, etc. So let us know. Let us know definitely in the
Austin
comments.
winning King of the Ring and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and we love lists as well. We love like debating. I don't know, like a John Cena's top 5 of all time. You know, somebody who's had more great moments, the better.
Yes. So let us know
if they've had 100 great moments. I want to whittle that down to 5.
Definitely. So comment, message, let us know. We're talking to you, Austin. We're talking to you, Westy. Comment, let us know.
Harry.
Yeah, we love you all. But before we go, just want to give another shout out to our sponsor. That's wrestlingpins.bigcartel.com. Wrestlingpins.bigcartel.com. WRASSLIM pins.bigcartel.com. Head on over there. They've got pins, mugs like The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret Hart, Razor Ramon, and much more. Just put the promo code IOHPod15 for 15% off your order. That's IOHPod15 for 15% off your order. And then head on over to Pro Wrestling Tees. It's our house. We're on there. Just look at the merch, see if you like it. If you do, buy it. It really helps us out as a small channel. All our social medias here, there, I think, or maybe there and there. But it's at PWCDs and at Faz's Thoughts. That's FAZZAS Thoughts. And Dee, do you want to tell where they can find us on every single platform?
Funnily enough, it's Our House Pod.
Yes, and we've changed it everywhere now.
Yeah, nice and generic, nice and easy. At It's Our House Pod, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, fucking MySpace, Bebo, Club Penguin. Anywhere you can find us, we're there.
We are.
We're starting to do really well on social media.
Yes, picking up a lot of traction, a lot of steam.
Got a lot of cool fans, a lot of loyal fans, and we appreciate all of you, every single one.
Yeah.
Really
so head over to YouTube, subscribe if you want to watch the video version of this. If you don't and you want to listen to us, we're on all podcast platforms, and you can find it in the link tree in the description down below. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Dees. I love speaking to you as always, buddy.
Yeah, man.
Take care of yourself, and we'll see you all in the next one.
You too, buddy.